ever wonder if puddles are portals to other worlds? What if stars are watching us as curiously as we watch them? What if we could see time the way we see rain? And could dreams just be glimpses of lives we didn't choose? Are we looking without truly seeing? Is the truth hovering just beyond reach? One small shift in perspective, could it change everything? Maybe our real competition is our own imagination. What if that idea that beats ours is being sketched right now on a napkin by a mind that saw what we missed? What if our real strength isn't our knowledge, but our courage to question even our own choices, especially our own choices? What if the answers we seek are just better questions? Like, is waiting worse than failing? Why can't I visit all the futures before deciding which to choose? Do you think we forgot the most important things when we grew up? What if the future doesn't belong to the people with all the answers, but to those who never stop wondering? The future of intelligence isn't artificial. The future is curious.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I like that video. So we're going to try not to bore you today with the typical artificial intelligence discussion. We're going to talk about curiosity, and that's the whole theme of that video. And I love the line in there that says, what if we just changed our perspective on something, or asked questions differently than we have in the past? So I'm Bob Baker. I'm the Chief Growth Officer for Data Palm. I've spent 3 decades in the consumer goods and retail industry, all of it in trade and sales marketing roles, and most of my time has been building models, analytics, and then helping companies transform that. So I spent the last 16 years in consulting, and about 6 months ago a company came and wanted to form an alliance with the company I was working for, and I met with them, and I got so blown away by what they showed me, because I had dealt with these problems in the industry for 3 decades that were just considered unsolvable. I left and I joined them, and that's why I'm here on the stage with you today. So we want to share a little bit about what we consider to be the next frontier of artificial intelligence. And I'm asking you to just think of one thing today, if you leave nothing else. Do not think AI is LLM. It's not just large language models. Artificial intelligence really is deep learning. And we're going to go through a really quick history journey to explain that, because it's really important for the context of what our company does. Every business leader has to understand more than just what happened. It's true in anything. Whenever we're trying to make decisions, we want to know why, like why something happened. That's the whole point of that video. It's questioning and asking things, asking better questions to get to the true answer of why we are where we are. That could be true of performance, that could be true of time schedules and travel. I mean, why did we get where we are, and then what should we do next? Those are the 2 questions every business leader is trying to answer. The trouble is that up to this point in our life, especially in our business lives, we've been relying on correlation to answer those questions. And correlation is a wonderful statistical technique that's been around since 1896. And we've all learned to live with it, and every company has built every model. Every statistical analysis is based off correlation. And you all probably go back to your Statistics 101 course and remember that correlation doesn't equal causation. Correlation only tells you things associate with each other. They don't tell you why. And that's just a fundamental fact. So you get a very siloed view of the world. It's static. So every time something changes, you have to go and recreate it, build a different model, a different analytical technique. It's very descriptive, but it doesn't explain the why or what to do next in any way. It just shows you that things move, they're associated with each other. We decided that there was something fundamentally wrong with that because we understood, the founders of this company understood that people were dealing with this siloed world and trying to make $100 billion decisions on a very imperfect model. There were a couple of challenges though. The first was what I was mentioning before. The world had shifted into deep learning, and this was back about 10 years ago. And so AI became known as large language models. AI became known as text and visualization. And there are a lot of predictive capabilities and others out there, but they were not the big story. And like I said, you can't really understand why. LLMs are amazing tools. And we're going to talk about the journey of them here for a second. But I think Elon Musk said it's like having a PhD in your pocket for any topic in the world. But it can't explain why. All an LLM, all a large language model can do is repeat back and look at patterns and give you back what it thinks the answer is. But it can't explain why it did that, and you can't see how it got there. You can understand the questions, and Claude's pretty good at showing you its logical track, but it cannot do causation. To do that, you have to create a new math. And so the second thing I want you to walk away with today, and if you want to use your LLM for something productive, search for a guy named Judea Pearl. If you've never heard his name, he's the reason you have spell check. He's the reason you can be typing an email and it'll recorrect your words. He was one of the founders of Bayesian networks back in the 80s, and he's been one of the pioneers of artificial intelligence and deep learning from the beginning. But he recognized this problem years ago of not being able to mathematically express causation. Because you can't teach a machine to do something unless there's math. So he created it. And I'm not going to explain the graph on the left, but what he basically came up with was a way of expressing why things cause other things to happen. And he did it with something he termed do calculus. But there's actually 3 levels of it. And most tools that you use today in business are at that first rung, which is association. That's pure correlation. These things associate with each other. As you move up that, so what I see, I can observe it, it's happening, I don't know why. So the next rung is, if I do something to one of those variables, what happens to the other variable? That's predictive. A lot of tools do that, but they do that on a single variable. Again, correlation really deals in a siloed world. So if you think of it like pricing and revenue, we all know that you change your price, you're going to change your revenue. Sort of an understood thing. But it's a one-to-one value. It's saying, I change this, this happens. But we all live in a world where that's not real. And that's the fundamental problem of correlation, is that it's not how the world actually works. It's just how, from 1896 to about 2017, how it could be explained. In 2017, he came up with this do calculus to say, what if I did this? What would happen to something else? But not just on one variable, on all the variables in what he called a DAG, which is nothing more than an actual graph illustration of all the causal factors that impact a phenomenon. I'm not trying to bore you, I'm trying to give you the context of why this is so important. Because once you do all of that, you realize there's hundreds and thousands of permutations that have to happen to be able to answer a true causal question of why price impacts revenue while something else is happening. Your competitor's taking an action. The economy suddenly took a dip. There's a social influencer that went out and said something about your brand that impacted you and you had no idea, and it happened in the Northeast 2 weeks ago, and all of a sudden your sales are dropping. It can't answer that, but with a causation map like this, it can. Some tools deal with that at that correlation level, and there's a lot of predictive tools out there. That's all your statistical forecasting tools, and it land in that middle level. But then he went one step further and he used something called counterfactuals, and that's being able to explain the world that didn't happen. That's imagining. So that's saying, well, imagine if I have $50 million left in my marketing budget and I'm running behind this year. What would have happened if I spent that $50 million in the most optimal way up to this point? What would my business look like now? Those are the kinds of questions no tools were able to answer really well before. So he created the math for that. Now here's another challenge. Thousands and thousands and thousands of permutations it takes to figure out all those factors in a single model. Nothing like that existed in the world. So around 2017, Google came out with a transformer architecture. If you've ever heard that paper, it was a seminal paper. But that essentially unlocked what you use today as an LLM. Because up to this point, to teach a machine to read text and understand it and predict the next word was a single line. It was like, I'm reading a line, the machine reads this one and predicts the next word. Very slow, very error prone, very bad. But Google created a way of basically doing this. Instead of reading one word, I can read the page all at once. So now suddenly I get context. Now imagine being able to do that across the World Wide Web. That's why the LLMs got so good so fast. So that started in 2017. And by 2022, you all probably remember the first time you saw ChatGPT. And then it went to Google's version, and then it went to Claude. And they've just continued to advance. So LLMs were the track. And everybody was putting the trillions of dollars that you see spent today, Anthropic, OpenAI, Google, Meta, everybody was putting their time into this. At this exact same time, 3 guys who came out of the ad agency world, who were dealing with the problems I was describing before, trying to get past correlation, trying to help companies actually make better decisions, said, why can't we use that transformer architecture and combine it with that math? And so they did. Now this is brand new. You've probably never seen it, although it's 7 years old, almost 9 years old now. No one knows about this. We are a new company from the standpoint of meeting all of you. But I am so happy to see you all in this room today because you all have a step up on your competition. I guarantee you, this time next year or very soon, you're going to be hearing a lot more about causal AI, not just because Data Poem's doing it. We are the first to actually bring it out to production and have clients on it and have it proven out as a working model. But this is, I believe, the next $1 trillion segment for businesses in AI. And that's why stop thinking of AI as LLM was my key message. So they created the model, the neural networks, everything that it takes to create, to teach a machine causation based on Judea-Pearl's math, using that architecture that was unlocked in 2017. Okay, so what did they build? Or what did we build? We built something we call Fount. It's just a name, you could call it Fred. But that's our learning architecture on the bottom. That's the math. It's a very, very, very large model. One single model, you can do one KPI, you can do 100 KPIs, it doesn't matter. And you can have as many factors in that model as you like because of that architecture. It's based on neural network technology. It doesn't just work off one variant, it's multivariant, so it can do all of that. It gets rid of multicollinearity and all the other challenges. If you've ever dealt with analytics, you understand the challenges of some of these things. It wiped all those away. So basically replaced correlation overnight. And it's essentially deep learning. So it doesn't just do it once, and you don't have to recreate the model every time something changes. The model's learning, just like your LLMs are learning. You maybe don't believe me, because these guys probably didn't believe what they had encountered or what they had stumbled on either when they originally designed it, the AI scientists. So they tested it. So we went out and we went to something called the M5 challenge. That's the second thing for you to put into your LLM. Type, what's the M5 challenge? It's a forecasting challenge. There were actually 5 iterations of it. The first 4 were based on clean data. The 5th, in 2020, took a bunch of Walmart data, messy data, real data, but messy, real world data, real world challenges, things like 0 sales. Certain items didn't sell for a certain number of days, so you don't have predictability like a constant flow. Niche items, complex seasonality, everything that a retailer actually has in their normal real world to deal with. And they invite the world to this competition. Anybody can sign up. And the winner, who predicted this thing, built 252 models to solve the problem. He was a student at Stanford. Now, that problem's pretty big. It's 10 stores, 3 states, 42,000 time series forecasts, because it's about 3,000 SKUs, and you have to do it at 12 aggregation levels. Remarkably hard problem to solve. This guy from Stanford solved it. He beat Google, he beat Amazon. Brilliant, brilliant statistician. A couple years later, this is still out there. So if you wanted to, you or your company could take the M5 challenge. The data is available in Kaggle, so you can go out and pull it down and take it yourself and post your results. So that's what we did. We said if we're going to do this, we're going to go after the hardest forecast challenge you can. Because if you're going to predict Y, you have to be accurate. So we had to prove accuracy. One model, not 250, beat him. And then we said, that's not enough. So then we said, what if we did this with weather forecasting? What if we applied this to electricity usage? We beat Google, we beat Intel, we beat everyone across the board on accuracy. So it is proven, and we'll talk a little bit later about how it's proven in business, because we do have some pretty large clients on it so far. But let's explain what it looks like. It's this model on the bottom that I talked about. But it's also a pre-trained model sitting on top of it for CPG, retail, and auto. Because there's a lot of data out there that we could buy to pre-train the model and teach it that industry, and you need to have the domain knowledge to be able to build that diagram I was talking about. And these guys came out of that industry when they originally designed it, and they've all hired folks like me who came from that industry, so we know how that industry works, so we know the right factors to put in there. So we built these pre-trained models, and then we have the agentic layer on top. That's how you actually interact with the model. And you ask it questions just like you would ask ChatGPT. Why is my performance down? Tell me how my paid media did last month. What could I do with $10 million more where would I spend it across my media platform? What's my forecast accuracy at Walmart on these 3 SKUs in North Dakota at store XYZ? Like, you can ask it, you just interact with it just like you would talk to your LLM. And where it sits in your stack is, most companies have their data layer. They've spent gazillions of dollars pulling all their data together and trying to create a data lake, which doesn't solve anything, but it does clean data up and make it point to a certain spot, which is good. It's better than when it's being siloed all over the place. You have dashboards that report out what happened. You have predictive platforms that are helping you with forecasting and modeling around trade or promotional dollars or media spend. You work with agencies on your marketing mix modeling. You have all of those different layers. This actually can and should sit above it. It's an enterprise decision tool because one model can look across the entire enterprise all at one time. It doesn't have to rely on the old correlation rules that existed for 100 years. And it can ask a leader of a company, from the CEO all the way down to the brand manager, how did I get here? What should I do next? And it can help them and guide the overall enterprise. And we could have applied this to anything. When we originally came, and we will, but we didn't start with boiling the ocean. I mentioned we came from this industry, so we focused on business. And we built that pre-trained model on publicly available data, and then licensed data that we purchased of over 1 trillion data points, basically explaining why people buy what they buy. So 15,000 brands, 250 billion transactions of people actually buying products, and that's what the pre-trained models are actually built on. Now here's how this works in the real world. You have a brand. Your brand exists in your ecosystem. You make decisions around that every day. Things that affect your equity, your marketing spend, your pricing, what kind of innovation you're going to do. And every one of the decisions there usually gets taken in a silo: sales, marketing, supply chain, distribution. And then you have your channels that you sell through. And every decision you take impacts something else in that circle. That's why correlation always breaks, because you don't see all those other things. That was the video where she's like, open your eyes up a little bit. Maybe we aren't asking the right questions. Maybe we're not being curious enough. But that's not hard enough, because then your competitors are doing the exact same thing, so all of that is impacting your brand, and then the world is impacting your brand. So that is the basis of our model, not any one of those single yellow dots where most tools that you have seen for the last 30 or 40 years have been focused. We're focused on the world. So we took all of that and put it into a single model using that causal math that you can query and ask questions of monthly. You could do daily if your data refreshes daily. Monthly, quarterly, half-year, annual, budget cycles, forecasting, market mix modeling. The applications of it become almost to whatever your imagination can think about. And in there, you get 4 basic features. There's three different agents. There's the causal insights agent, telling you why things are occurring the way they are. There's another agent that helps you predict and forecast and model the business going forward. And then there's the optimization engine, which lets you ask questions like, how could I do better? I can put constraints on it. What would I do if I had 10% less budget next year? What would my sales look like on this brand? And how should I optimize for growth so I don't lose? Like all those types of questions are in the third agent of optimization. You can do it monthly, short-term or long-term. You can do it for your offline and online channels, all together in one model. You can obviously do scenario planning and forecasting. It's granular, so just to be clear, we're not claiming 90% accuracy at the brand level, but when you get down to the store, it's more like 75%, which is history shows is the way most tools work. We're 90% at the granular, at the store SKU level, and roll it up to the top, which is a huge difference. Now, how you use it is up to you, but what we see a lot of our clients, there's 3 basic ways. There's the top level, the enterprise level, sort of the C-suite level that's asking questions like, what's the best growth allocation for my dollars? Or what's the corporate growth forecast look like for the portfolio of companies that I manage? Where should I be placing my bets? What's happening in the next year that I should be being aware of looking backward and looking at all the data that's around in the news? It's pulling all of it, and it's helping them sort of strategically think about the future and set direction. And then the next level down can use it for understanding how to take that and functionally bring it to life inside the company. So a marketing team can use it, a sales team can use it, a supply chain team can use it. And then ultimately, because it's built so granular, it can also predict it or provide you a tactical plan for how to bring that to life so you can actually see it in the P&L. So things like, in a marketing mix world again, we actually work with the agency. So the agency, the client, are all on the same platform. So when you set up your media plan, the agency has that, they have your tactics, they know exactly how it's being implemented, and you can then measure and monitor on a very agile basis and make changes as you go through the year. So it's a really interesting shift, and that's why I say I really genuinely believe over the coming, it's hard to say in this world because things move so fast. There are other companies out there claiming and talking about causation, but none of them have an actual platform around it. And none of them have the entire multivariate model that we built. So that's why we think as this gets more exposure, people are going to start seeing it and looking at it. And you'll probably be hearing more about it over the next year for sure. We have 5 of the top CPG companies in the world that are using or evaluating the platform. When I say evaluating, it means they're in pilot. So our typical way of showing this tool to people is ways like this, talking about it. But when we actually sit down one-on-one with you, it's piloting it, proving it, and then that usually, we haven't had, Tom, correct me, Tom's going to be up in a second. We haven't had anyone that piloted it that didn't move into the contract. I mentioned the forecast benchmarks. I would encourage you to go out and I would, actually 2 things. I wouldn't search for us on the web as tell me about causal AI. This is brand new. Gartner is covering this. Gartner is talking about it. There's about 4 or 5 different MQs that they use for this. And we're talking with Gartner. I'm looking at Arpit, our marketing person right now. But it's actually kind of difficult because we fall in like 8 different places where Gartner's covering right now. They haven't seen an application like this, so we're just beginning to really talk to the analyst community about it as well. But if you search datapoem.ai, that's our corporate website, and you'll understand a little bit more about it. And it's pretty significant what it's helping unlock for our clients. And Tom's going to step up next and actually walk you through some actual use cases of this and clients that are using it, what they're realizing. But on average, McKinsey did a study a couple of years ago, not on causal AI, but on enterprises breaking those siloed decisions that they make and looking at the business from an enterprise level. And they found about 1% to 2% EBITDA improvement, basic profit improvement. So if you're a $10 billion company, that's a lot of money. And that's not once, that's reoccurring. But we thought, well, that's a good study, and we understand how you can do it. You can get there through product mix, you can get there through marketing, promo, retail, so on. But we wanted to prove it out. So a lot of our clients have been, that we've worked with for the last couple of years, have given us some really interesting use cases that we want to share with you now, and that's where I'm going to ask Tom to come up and talk a little bit.
Good morning, folks. I think Bob did a fantastic job of really capturing what we're talking about here from a causal aspect, aspect of this. But more importantly, I think of actually marketing as an organism for your organization. And what that simply means from a causal standpoint is that each individual component, each decision that you make, whether it be strategic or tactical decisioning, that actually has an impact on something else, right? So if we actually increase television, there may be an actual impact overall in terms of ROI, or CAC may go down or something of that nature, right? All of them work in tandem with each other. They're not in isolation. Unfortunately, we've been in a business where everything is in correlation, not causation. And what that simply means is everything is in individual silos. So if I look at TV as an example and I say I want to look at the ROI associated with TV, it looks at TV in isolation, but not TV and the impact that it actually has on Google or Instagram or some other mechanism within the organization, right? So we have to look at this in more holistic type of fashion, not just in an individual silo type of basis. I'm going to give you a little bit of a story. So about a year ago, let me just jump ahead here for a second. About a year ago, we got a call from one of our retail clients, the Fortune 100 retail client, and they were struggling a little bit, right? So I think anytime that your revenue is off by 10%, I'd say you're struggling a little bit, right? What are the decisions that occur after this? Well, it was nice seeing you, shake your hand, pat you, and then get out the door, right? So they're really kind of trying to figure out what they need to do to be able to overcome and be able to change the dynamics associated with this organization. So there are a number of different factors. One, there was a skew focus, and they went through some changes in an assortment type of category. They made changes with media, loyalty, brand loyalty tracking, trade, and also e-commerce overall. One of the things, though, is in the last 3 years, over a 3-year period of time, they took significant amount of increases in price, specifically on their anchor brand. So think about it. Your sales are going down and you're raising your price. What is the first thing that comes to mind? Aha, that must be the reason for it, right? I mean, that's obvious, right? But let's kind of peel the onion back a little bit on that, right? First problem is, as a good businessman, I decided I'm going to go to my team and I'm going to ask them, well, hey, give me an idea what's going on within the organization. So this individual called his team members, and they're actually very siloed, right? Everyone has their own model and their own data that they're utilizing, and everything's fantastic. And every one of those folks in the marketing model, the trade model, business, IBF, pricing, they all came in and said, everything is fantastic. We're doing great. And he's going, well, there's a problem here. Revenues are down 10%. If all of you folks are doing great, what the hell's the problem then? Something's got to be wrong here, right? And so the difficulty right there is that the business was being looked in as silos. It wasn't being looked at in conjunction with each other. So breaking down the silos is the key element overall. So what did we do? Well, our whole goal and our product is actually based upon creating a unified growth model for the individual client. What does that mean, right? Sounds pretty cool, right? Everyone does that. PowerPoints look fantastic. You can make yourself look great. By the way, if you looked at my picture, that was AI. It looked fantastic. I'm going to keep going with that. I may take it down 10 years younger to make myself a little better looking. But so what you do off of this is we actually created this growth model for the client. So we looked at what the impacts were on this 10% loss. And how many do you think it was price? And you could raise your hands fine. You know, you guys were out drinking last night. It's cool. No one? Am I the only one raising my hand? I feel lonely. So anyone? Anyone? All right, I'll go with that. You're kind of right, okay? But it wasn't the driving factor overall. When you look at price in terms of this drop, price only represented $17 million of a drop. $17 million of over $100 million drop. What were some of the other impact factors? Skew portfolio. They didn't have the portfolio set up appropriately. They were introducing new brands. They were underfunding the new brands. They were actually reallocating dollars from the anchor brand, moving it to the secondary and tertiary brands overall. And so that had a significant impact in terms of overall sales. The demand levers, they didn't get their mix right at all. It was kind of all over the place. And why? Each individual fiefdom was protecting their own world, right? So I'm the marketing guy, or I'm the media guy. I'm going to make sure that media is getting a 10% increase in revenue in terms of investment. So you always have that within these organizations. Then campaign, and then it was retail marketing, which was an untapped resource that was extremely valuable across the board for this brand. So once we've determined this, we take it the next step. And now what we want to see, how did they spend their money, right? So remember, Bob was talking about the what. We knew what the what was. The sky is falling 10% down, right? Now we're going into the why. Why did it happen, right? So we're looking at why it happened, and we'll see. First out of the gate is they actually decreased the spend on two of the probably most important factors within the organization. One is the anchor brand, the brand that everyone knows this company about. They decided to cut money on that. Not a good move. That'll be one takeaway based upon that. Feed the anchor brand as much as you can. The other two, which is a secondary and tertiary brand, they actually increased the spend on those. Okay, that makes sense, right? We're trying to be able to introduce new product within the marketplace. And then in new innovation, they were trying to break a new product, and they didn't spend any money on trying to break a new product. And they were wondering why, I don't know why these new innovation sales are not actually happening. Well, it's not that difficult to kind of look at that and put it together and say, hey, there's some difference there. The interesting thing, so what I want to point out is the anchor brand has what's called a halo impact on the remainder of the brands across the board, right? And what that simply means, my anchor brand, if I'm spending money, all ships will rise at the same rate. If you're a secondary or tertiary brand that you're putting money against, that does not make all ships rise, right? Because people don't know that secondary or tertiary brand to be able to lift all the boats, right? So right out of the gate, the anchor brand dropped close to $100 million, like that, in a year. The other problem that was associated with it, if you look at the basket halo on the far right, that big red box, right? That was a $108 million loss based upon not supporting the anchor brand. Because the anchor brand not only impacted the anchor brand, it impacted the secondary brand, the tertiary brand, and the innovation brand across the board. So the moral of the story is they didn't support the anchor brand. They cut dollars back inappropriately in certain areas, but they didn't have any visibility to this. So we were able to actually peel the onion back to be able to provide them with this information. So again, going further is this just talks about how they were buying. They were actually buying media and marketing in silos. And so in the individual silos, they weren't necessarily doing a very good job of picking and choosing what they were putting in their marketing budgets. So like paid media, the ROI was down. So that was not a good selection of the right type of media elements associated with that. Influencer marketing, down ROI. Okay, combination, we're not selling as much, we're not buying as effectively. Well, lo and behold, that's going to have an impact overall in terms of sales. One thing that they did not factor in is this thing called halo or synergy impact that's overall, right? So when people are looking at that, if you're looking at the world in silos, you're not looking at the impact, like I said before, on television, on Google, as an example. So if you think about it, it's not a 1 + 1 = scenario, like TV dollar, Google dollar, that equals 2. In fact, it's TV dollar, Google dollar equals $2.20 in terms of the impact because of the halo factor that occurs associated with that. So what we did was we were able to show the client that when we look at certain pieces of media and also strategies that they were taking, is they weren't just actually impacting in a silo type of standpoint, which in this situation represented 25.6% of revenue. It actually represents 36.7% of revenue. So what does that mean for you? That means you have the opportunity to move some dollars into other mechanisms as well, so that you, instead of just over-delivering on the 36.7 million, which is a lot of money, don't get me wrong, but moving that into other media so that you can actually make sure the ships rise and look at other opportunities where you should be spending your money. And one of them is this thing called retail media. You may have heard about it. I don't know, one of you may have heard about it. And dealing with Walmart and Target and all, they're really easy to deal with when it comes to this, right? You just get a dictate, they tell you to give you a certain amount of money, you give it because you have to, because you gotta get shelf space and all that great stuff, right? My daughter's in the business, so she calls me up complaining about this all the time. So what we found when we were actually peeling the onion back, specifically on Amazon, we found that Amazon has an impact, brick and mortar. So Amazon, this online mechanism, you may have used it once, and the impact that it had on brick and mortar for Walmart, Target, and other retailers was 20%. So if I actually went on Amazon and I looked at a product and I said, that's really cool, I love that, that's fantastic. A lot of people want to look, feel, and taste, right? They want to touch the product, right? Then they went to Target and made a purchase. So that dollar that was being spent on Amazon was having a 20% halo impact on sales in the brick and mortar for Walmart, and then another 20% in Target. So that $1 was going really far, right? It was being stretched dramatically overall. So one of the suggestion was, put some money back into here. You cut the money out, put the money back in, reallocate towards these retail media networks, because quite frankly, this is gonna be the next generation. This is where it's gonna move very aggressively. So, what do we do then? Okay, so now we just went through the what, we went the why, what happened, and now what do you do, right? You don't want to leave someone hanging with the what do you do, right? Oh, hey, fantastic, that was great, we'll leave you, see you, bye. And another $10,000 you can actually get the answer associated with this, right? What we do is we actually provide you with what you should do from a budgetary standpoint. So this is at a high level. We're talking about the enterprise level, right? This is what Bob was talking about. We provide information at the strategic level down to the tactical level. So what we did was in this situation, we actually optimized the program and we looked at just certain areas. I can show the whole thing. It'll be on 3 pages. So we looked at loyalty and promotions, which was a high spender in the retail. You guys deal with that every day. It's a big, significant amount of money. Peeled some money off of that. Influencer and social, we pulled that back. We actually increased the amount of dollars that were being paid and spend, and also the digital co-op and retail media. The cool part about this is we didn't ask them to spend another dollar. So there was $0 extra in the budget. So they didn't have to come up with another $50 million to be able to chase $100 million, right? That's kind of foolhardy if you want to do that. In this situation, with no additional dollars being spent, just kind of rearranging the chairs on the deck, right? Rearranging the chairs on the deck, we actually led to a 7% increase in growth. Just by moving the tactics and strategies around on individual media-related components and also the tactics that you're utilizing. Taking it one step down, as Bob was saying, we get down to the SKU level, right? So if we go down to the individual SKU level, we go down to the store level too, which is kind of wacky, be a little too much to fit on a slide here. But if we're looking at the anchor brand, the anchor brand was not being supported. Anchor brand, again, that has all boats rise at the same time. Recommended increasing the spend on the anchor brand, decreasing it on the secondary and tertiary brand, and you gotta put some money against innovation. If you're bringing a new product out, don't let it hang there. You're just asking it to die on the vine, right? So by doing that, just by moving these dollars around, again, we're not asking for any more money, just by doing that, it generated an extra $122 million. And then this thing called retail media. Again, you may know it. You may know this thing, Amazon. You may have used it once or twice or 1,000 times. I look like an Amazon warehouse at my house. It's amazing all the stuff that comes in from my wife. I'm amazed by it. But what we recommended is across-the-board increases in retail media. And Amazon being one, there is a saturation point. You can't spend so much money on one of these things. So you've got to be cognizant of that when you're actually putting these plans together. But from an Amazon standpoint, we knew that Amazon was going to help every other brand in brick and mortar portfolio. So by moving money into here, we were able to get another $64 million lift. All this would be garbage if, in fact, the model accuracy was in 70% that Bob was talking about, or 60%, or whatever the case may be. That's just a guess, right? You might as well just take a dartboard out, throw a dart against it, and say, I hope it's working out, right? That's great. That's how a lot of people have their resumes out on the street and looking for other gigs, right? In this situation, we looked at it from both the short-term basis for this client, and we also forecasted their forward-going revenues as well. Based upon our numbers, we were actually in just the short term for one individual quarter our accuracy level was 94.4%. Huge. I mean, they were at the 70 level, so this was just like nirvana. That alone they were excited about. Looking at it in a full year, 25, so if I'm going into my 2027 planning process right now, in October, I can actually project out my 2027. The only thing you can't project is range dressing. You know, when all of the folks came here from, you know, for the World Cup, or, you know, I don't even I like ranch dressing, but it's a little bit over the top with the ranch dressing thing, but God bless. People like that, right? But based upon this, it was at 94% projecting out for the full year. The same thing would happen when you're doing forecasting for 2027. So again, if you don't have high accuracy in the model, don't follow anyone, is the moral of the story, because you're just gonna be going down a rabbit hole and losing money. Just a few points on this one is, one, I'm gonna just stay on the top ones. There's a lot of blind spots. The world your marketing is an organism. It's not individual silos. If you play it like silos, you're gonna lose money. If you look at it in tandem with each other, all of the different tactics and strategies you use, you're gonna be in the winning game overall. Retail media, don't forget about it. It's going to grow, it's going to continue to grow, and it's going to continue to be an important part of all our lives and moving forward. And make sure you take a look at that thing called Amazon. There's a great halo impact that Amazon has on many other the retail networks. And then, don't forget your anchor brand. It cost them $200 million by not protecting the anchor brand. If you're going to do anything else, if people know you for a specific aspect of it, make damn well sure you actually support it with some money behind it, and don't peel money back off of that, because that's what people remember you as, and that's going to have that, it's going to lift all boats across the board. I'll stop it there, and I'll let Bob close things out. Thank you.
Now we're done, so hopefully, thank you. Hopefully you enjoyed the breakfast today, and hopefully the talk was interesting. Like I said when we started, it's actually a full room now, so I'm glad to see that, because I do genuinely believe you're seeing the future. We want to pioneer this, and we want more and more clients to observe it and see it. There's a couple of things we want to leave you with today. It's that siloed decisions are not inevitable. You do not have to live like this. It's like I tell my kids. You don't actually have to live like that. You can make a change. And we do think that, you know, a lot of the tools that exist today all have had their run, and they're really, really strong tools for what they were built to do, but their day's over, and their days are numbered. The second thing is correlations had its run. I did a LinkedIn post on this last week with a tombstone. You know, it's been a great tool, and it's been phenomenal, and it still has application as a statistical method, but causation is the future. This is where all the investment dollars will start to flow. And thirdly, that decision layer that hasn't been there before has now been unlocked. You now can actually see across the organization and down through your functions in one single application that just fundamentally was missing before. I want to thank you again for your time. Hopefully you got a little bit out of it today, and I genuinely want to thank you for, you know, allowing us to come up and talk to you about something that we're passionate about. So thanks very much.